This is Spiritual Ministration, Chapter 7, Mission and Upadesha, Part 2. Mauna Upadesha, Silent Instruction. A large majority of those who visit sadhus go there not only for their darshan, but also to gain enlightenment by listening to their pravachan, spiritual talks or lectures. The sadhus also, by and large, cater to this public hankering by giving talks and discourses. Therefore, devotees who come for Sri Swamiji's darshan and who are not yet familiar with his methods are somewhat nonplussed to find that Sri Swamiji gives no spiritual discourses. People are allowed to have his darshan and may thereafter participate in the kirtan, devotional singing, if they so feel like it. Those who are further interested and seek spiritual guidance are instructed to come at the time of the regular dhyana classes and to take initiation into dhyana. However, there are no lectures or discourses. This is often a source of disappointment to those who have come with the hope of being treated to a religious discourse, and the less discerning among them at times complain that Sri Swamiji only sits silently and gives no instructions. Those who complain thus are obviously ignorant of the nature of spiritual instruction, and hence this aspect needs some elucidation. According to our scriptures, mauna or silence is considered to be the best and most potent form of upadesha, instruction. This is exemplified in the story of Dakshinamurti, in which it is told how Bhagavan Shankara appeared as a youthful guru in the form of Dakshinamurti to grant peace to the four Maharshis, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanat Kumar and Sanat Sujata, and how he revealed to them the truth through Mauna Upadesha. Again, when Sri Ramana Maharshi was once asked why he did not go about preaching the truth to the people at large, he replied, "How do you know I am not doing so? Does preaching consist of mounting a platform and haranguing the people around? Preaching implies communication of knowledge, and that is best done through silence. What do you think of a man who listens to a sermon for an hour and goes away without having been impressed by it, so as to change his life? Compare him with another who sits in a holy presence and goes away after some time with his outlook on life totally changed. Which is better, to preach loudly without effect, or to sit silently sending out inner spiritual force? Again, how does speech arise? There is pure knowledge, whence arises the ego, which in turn gives rise to thought, and thought leads to the spoken word. So the spoken word is the great grandson of the original source, which is silence. If the spoken word can produce effect, judge for yourself how much more powerful must be the preaching through silence. So in the tradition of the great gurus of yore, Sri Swamiji also employs the power of Mauna Upadesha to carry out an inner transformation of those who turn to him for guidance. This is not to say that Sri Swamiji is averse to giving spiritual instruction of any sort. If a sadhaka or disciple has some genuine problems in his sadhana and approaches Sri Swamiji for a solution of these problems, he receives simple and practical instructions, which helps him overcome his problems. However, this is mainly in the sphere of practical guidance. Sri Swamiji does not encourage theoretical discussions, particularly if such discussions are indulged in merely as a philosophical exercise, and not for the purpose of clearing up any genuine doubts that a sadhaka may have about the spiritual path. If he deigns to give any instructions, these will usually be practical guidelines meant to help a sadhaka in the purposeful conduct of his sadhana. Otherwise, Sri Swamiji's answers to most problems will be simply, do more and more dhyana. Indeed, this is normally the best and only remedy, because as a sadhaka will himself realize, all problems get automatically resolved when a sadhaka learns to surrender his all to the Guru and devotes himself increasingly to the practice of dhyana. The Yoga Vasishta Ramayana. As Sri Swamiji attained the highest realization without any previous instruction or grounding in religious philosophy, he attaches little or no importance to theory in the instruction and training of his disciples. However, those who continue to importune him to give some upadesha, or who wish to know his views on spiritual theory, are referred by him to the Yoga Vasishta Ramayana. Read the Yoga Vasishta, he says. Swamiji's philosophy is fully expounded in that scripture. So for those who want to know more about the scripture, a few introductory words on the Yoga Vasishtha are given below. Sri Rama, after obtaining permission from his father King Dasharath, proceeded on a long pilgrimage during which he visited all the holy pilgrimage centers of India, as also the ashrams of the great rishis of his time. Returning from this pilgrimage, Sri Ram was seized by an overwhelming spirit of vairagya, renunciation or detachment from mundane affairs. King Dasharatha was sorely troubled to see Sri Ram in this condition, and so he requested the Kul Guru or family guru of the Raghus, Vasishtha, to give suitable instruction to Rama. The Upadesha or instruction given by sage Vasishtha on the occasion to Sri Rama over a period of several days has been enshrined in the Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana. It is to this day considered the finest exposition of Advaita Vedanta in the whole vast history of Indian religious literature. The abstruse truths of the Advaita philosophy have been explained at length and in great detail with the help of a wealth of stories and anecdotes. An uncommon feature of the Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana is that when giving his Upadesha, Vasishtha Mahamuni was in communion with the infinite, and hence all his utterances have to this day the power of a mantra and can infuse enlightenment in a sadhaka of matured mind who reads and listens to this dialogue. In fact, towards the closing stages, the sage tells Sri Rama in a state of rapture that it was not Vasishtha who was speaking to him, but it was the Atma of Sri Ram which was instructing him through the sage. The Yoga Vasishtha is divided into 6 prakaranas or sections. A brief survey of these prakaranas is given in the succeeding paragraphs. Vairagya Prakarana, a section on renunciation. This section opens with a description of the mental state of Sri Rama on his return from his pilgrimage. Sri Rama is summoned by Dasharatha in the presence of the sages Vasishtha and Vishwamitra. When Sri Rama arrives, sage Vasishtha asks him to explain the reasons for his melancholy state of mind and his indifference toward all worldly affairs. On being thus asked, Sri Rama lays bare the thoughts and reflections that have been troubling his mind and which have given him no peace. In fact, his words and attitude of mind reveal the awakening of a burning vairagya, dispassion. However, Sri Rama has serious doubts about the soundness of the conclusions he has reached. He therefore solicits his guru to instruct him and thereby dispel the gloom of his heart. As Vasishtha Mahamuni begins his Upadesha, all the legendary Siddhas and Maharishis descend to Dasharath's court to listen to this heavenly dialogue. Mumukshu Prakarana, section of the Mumukshu. A Mumukshu is an aspirant who longs for liberation. This section deals with the preparatory disciplines that a sadhaka must undertake and the moral and mental qualities he must cultivate in order to qualify for the spiritual path. According to the Yoga Vasishtha, Shanti, quiescence and peace of mind, Santosh, contentment, Satsanga, association with the realized sages, and Vichara, or inquiry into the nature of Atma, are the 4 sentinels who guard the gates to moksha, or liberation. The attitude that one is hampered by destiny is not being able to follow the spiritual path is severely condemned, and the sadhaka is urged to rely upon purushkara or personal exertion for progress in the spiritual path. The sadhaka should not shun action, but should learn to be indifferent to the fruits of action. He should not be affected by the pleasures or the pains which are an inevitable accompaniment of action. The sadhaka is advised to keep holy company and to study the shastras, scriptures, particularly those dealing with Atma Vidya, self-knowledge. Utpatti Prakarana, section on origin or creation. This section deals with the origin and nature of the Jagat or universe. According to the Yoga Vasishtha, this universe with its multitudinous objects, its concepts of time and space, and its varied laws is only a creation of one's own mind. Just as the mind creates a world in the dream state, so it also creates an imaginary world in the waking state. The only difference between the dream state and the waking state is that dreams are short and the waking state is relatively longer. Time and space are only ideas of the mind. Through the power of the mind, a kalpa or age may pass in a moment, or a moment in time in the waking state may be experienced as years in the dream state. The same is applicable to the concept of space. All these facts are illustrated by a number of interesting and revealing stories. Sthiti Prakarana, section on firm abidance. This section discusses the place of the jiva, individual soul, in the scheme of creation. Vasishtha points out that the jiva is no other than the ahankara, or the I thought or ego sense. This ahankar is the chief impediment to atmasthiti, or firm abidance in one's true self. It is because of ahankar that human beings fail to recognize themselves as they really are, and as a consequence suffer misery. It is only when the ahankar is extinguished that a sadhaka attains atmasthiti. The body and the senses are inert. It is the reflected light of the Atma that gives life to the body and makes the senses perform their functions. It is further pointed out that the objects perceived by the senses are also not different from the Atma. In fact, the perceiver and the objects perceived both originate from the Atma and hence are identical. When a sadhaka gains firm comprehension of this truth, he then realizes that nothing exists apart from his own Atma or self. This Atma is then realized as the originator of this universe and its enjoyer as well. When this knowledge becomes firm, the sadhaka is freed from the duality of happiness and sorrow. Brahmacharya, continence, abhyas, constant practice, and vairagya, dispassion or desirelessness, have been stated to be the means of attaining this knowledge, which in turn leads to atmasthiti, or firm abidance in the self. Upashanti Prakarana, section on attainment of quiescence. The Sthiti Prakarana sets out the goal. The Upashanti Prakarana gives the instructions on the ways and means of attaining that goal. As pointed out, the chief impediment to realization is the false identification of the Atma with the body. This false identification is because of ahankar, or the ego sense. This section gives practical guidance for the elimination of this ahankar, and a number of methods and yogic processes are described for this purpose. The chief of these are vichara, or inquiry into the true nature of the self. Samadarshana, seeing all creation with an equal eye as varied manifestations of the one Brahman, considering oneself in all conditions of life and all times as chit, or pure consciousness, and performing one's allotted duties in life without any attachment. When, as a result of these practices, the sadhaka becomes perfectly asanga, not attached in any way to the fruits of one's actions, all attachments, aversions, and fear disappear, and he becomes qualified for attaining the samadhi stage. Nirvana Prakarana, section on liberation. This section is divided into two subsections, viz. Purva Bhaga and Uttara Bhaga. The Purva Bhaga explains that the Atma is the true Swarup of the Jiva. The sadhaka is instructed to give up all ideas of diversity and to still the movement of the mind. Having thus rendered the mind quiescent, he should persist in remaining absorbed in the Atman in the form of chit, or pure consciousness. As a result of this practice, a stage comes when the sadhaka perceives the identity of his own Atma with Brahman. He sees the manifest universe as non-different from Brahman and perceives that, like the subtle tree that arises from the that lies embedded in the seed, the whole universe in the form of created and uncreated beings lies in subtle seed form in his own heart. This subsection also incorporates the highly instructive teachings that Maheshwara imparted to sage Vasishtha. At this stage of the discourse, Sri Rama becomes absorbed in deep dhyan. In the Uttara Bhaga, sage Vasishtha explains that true vairagya is achieved only by the awakening of Atma Gyan, or self-knowledge, as a result of which there is an automatic cessation of all actions and their fruit. The sadhaka no longer identifies himself with the body, nor seeks enjoyment from worldly objects. It is only when he realizes his own identity with the Paramatma and remains firmly established in this knowledge that he attains Param Nirvana, or supreme liberation. The sage also narrates his own experiences of Samadhi thus: in this state, the sense of separate identity is lost. He knows himself as one with Chidaksha, or pure consciousness, and with the attainment of this knowledge, everything else becomes known to him. He sees himself as existing everywhere and in all places, and hence he feels no need for locomotion, as he has nowhere to go. Though devoid of the sense organs, he can see everything with his jnana netra, or eye of wisdom, and he thus perceives that the innumerable universes of myriad names and forms exists within the Chidaksha as his own body. As the discourse nears its end, and Sri Rama's doubts and mental agitations are all gone, and when Vasishtha Mahamuni starts discoursing on Nirvana, Sri Ram and those in the assembly who had been regularly listening to this Upadesha are all lifted to the blissful plane of consciousness. Sri Rama, freed from the distressing thoughts that had been weighing upon his mind, is at this stage absorbed in Samadhi and has no more questions to ask. And as the great sage concludes his discourse, Sri Rama exclaims in rapturous joy, "Ah, I have attained the most wonderful state of Nirvana, which is the end and the purpose of life. I am always in Swarup, but in the extremely peaceful myself there is nothing that is now covetable to me." Vasishtha then goes on to explain that having attained the state of Nirvana, Rishis are endowed with Sahaj Samadhi, or natural state of Samadhi, which allows them to mix with people and to perform their allotted duties in life without in any way affecting their Samadhi state. That Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara are likewise carrying out their respective functions, and that it now behooves Sri Ram to remain firmly established in Brahman always, and to joyfully carry out his work and duties in the true spirit of a Jivan Mukta. As stated earlier, these are only distilled remarks designed to introduce the sadhaka to this great scripture. Those who wish to know more about the profound teachings embodied in the scripture, particularly with a view of gaining a better understanding of Sri Swamiji's teachings, would do well to make a more detailed study of the Yoga Vasishtha.